It really can't be understated what a huge hit Famicom Jump was. That first game sold over 1 million copies, and that made it the best-selling Famicom game of 1989. But here's the thing about Famicom Jump. It's a pretty bad game. Even for 1989, it looked ugly, and the action in that action RPG was not much fun. Bandai's usual way to handle a licensed game was to farm it out to Tosei, give them no money for it, and just rely on the name to make it sell. But I think by 1991, people had caught on that you should avoid Bandai games. Or at least they seem to be trying to put in a little bit more effort into their games lately. Because for Famicom Jump II, Bandai pulled out all the stops. Rather than just dump some awful game on people, knowing that they'll buy it because Goku was on the box, Bandai decided to make this one a proper RPG. And who better to make an RPG than the exact same team that made the Dragon Quest series? Even Akira Toriyama's here, though he's just one of 7 artists who contributed designs. Given its pedigree, I guess that makes Famicom Jump II essentially Dragon Quest 4.5. Famicom Jump gets its title and concept from Shonen Jump, the most popular comic magazine in Japan, which, considering the low sales for comic magazines outside of Japan, I guess that makes it the most popular one in the world. We've seen literally dozens of Famicom games that were based on comics published in Shonen Jump. One more thing of note before we get into the game itself, Bandai reused the same shells from the original Famicom Jump for this. They have Famicom Jump molded into them, making this series the only Famicom games to have their title on the cartridge like that. The plot of Famicom Jump 2 is pretty abstract. There's a bad guy, people should team up and go beat him. The original Famicom Jump had you control 16 different heroes, and Famicom Jump 2 scales that back a lot. Now there's only 7 heroes that you can use, and they each represent their own series. 4 of these heroes have their own Famicom game, or multiple Famicom games. The 7 characters for you to collect are Toruruto from Magical Toruruto-kun, Jotaro from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Tachan from Jungle no Oja Tachan, Momotaro from Sakigake Otokojuku, Tyson from Rokodenashi Blues, Ryotsu from Kochira Katsushi Kamiari Koen Mai Hashu Tsujo, and Goku from Dragon Ball? That one sounds fake. At the outset of the game, you pick one of those heroes as your starting character, and then you launch into the quest hub. This is a town that you can teleport back and forth from, and every hero has their own exit from it, so as you recruit more, you have more options. You also can get 7 vials right at the start that will heal you during combat, and you can come back here to refill those. Once you're set, you take your teleporter to the world, and into the story chapter for that hero you've selected. The way that this works is every hero has their own intro story, and then once it's completed, you recruit that hero to your team. Then with the story complete, you get a Dragon Ball and a path to the next story. That means you have to do the first 2 stories solo, and the story progression is a big ring, until you've recruited all 7 heroes. I chose as my starting character noted marine biologist Jojo, and he had to find a stand user that turned the population of a town to stone. Unfortunately, you don't really fight anyone's villains except for Goku. A few of his got brought into the game, but everybody else fights generic people. Once I had won that fight, it was off to the jungle where I met Tachan, and their animals were being stolen. And once I found my way through his dungeon and recruited him, it was off to Momotaro's school, which was weirdly an extremely short chapter, where all you had to do was walk into town, tell the principal you wanted him to go with you, and then pass a test of manliness, which you had to do solo. So that means I had to do the first 3 chapters solo. As for the other heroes, Tyson is looking for his missing girlfriend, Ryotsu's looking for a dog that carried off the payroll, Goku's trying to save his kidnapped son, and Toruruto's trying to get some takoyaki. After you've recruited everyone, you'll have collected all 7 Dragon Balls, and so you'll make a wish. What wish they make is random, but usually it's some kind of permanent upgrade for the character you have leading your party. You can recollect the Dragon Balls after that, and you can make up to 16 wishes that way. The other thing that happens once you've collected all the heroes is that the real game begins. 7 monsters are now stalking the world, and your team has to take those out. Each of the monsters was designed by one of the creators for each of the comics. And finally, once you've taken out all the monsters, you can go after the big bad guy. You can only have 3 people in your party at a time, and you'll have to go back to the Mystic Realm to switch people out. The interface as you're exploring is similar to most RPGs. Hit the A button to bring up a menu where you can choose to talk, search, use an item, check your status, change your equipment, or save the game. There's 3 battery save slots here, and you can only save while wandering the overworld. You can get into random combats as you explore, and this is where Famicom Jump II gets really different. Battles play out on this overhead map, and you can move a certain distance on your turn. You perform your action by pressing A, and it defaults to an attack. But pressing B will rotate that through special ability, defense, item, and back to attack. Regardless of what level you are, everyone has 5 hit points, and using your special ability costs 1 of those hit points. When you're down to 2 hit points, you turn purple, and when you're down to 1 hit point, you turn red. Defeating an enemy while you're on your last hit point with a special move doesn't kill you, and even if somebody's been defeated in battle, if your side wins, everybody gets experience. You run away from combat by moving someone off the edge of the map. Status effects are indicated by the character turning a different color. They'll turn blue if they're poisoned, for example. Not all characters begin with their special ability. Some of them need to level up a few times. And as you level up, those special abilities will become enhanced, and your attacks will change. So Jotaro's special ability was to launch his stand out across the map at people, and Tanchan's ability was to summon an insect swarm that damages an entire column of the map. But Jotaro's physical attacks were rather weak, while Tanchan throws a boomerang that passes through multiple enemies. All of this gives combat a really nice tactical feel. You're doing more than just choosing to attack. You have to consider position, try to line people up, perhaps try to keep out of their reach while counterattacking. And since you always have healing items available to you, you can push yourself a bit hard. If you do wind up falling in battle, you get teleported back to the Mystic Realm and lose half your money. Unsurprisingly, Famicom Jump II was a pretty big success in Japan. Not as big as the original, but it still did pretty well. But there were signs of it being a rush production. The game is notorious for being riddled with typos, for example. It has a bit of a mixed reputation in retrospect. My take on Famicom Jump II is that it's interesting, but it also doesn't seem to work quite as well as I would like. Part of that is I took the wrong character to start out with. Jotaro apparently has the single hardest start of any character. Not that I knew that when I was making my selections. Because his special attack is the only thing he has that's effective, and it's not that effective, starting out with Jotaro means you have to grind a lot. And the grind here is pretty slow. 25 points to reach level 2, 1 experience point per fight, and fights take about 30 seconds or so to play out. And I have to say it really was a disappointment that the game didn't lean into its theme. You've got the 7 heroes there, but really no one else. You might get a cameo from some of their supporting cast, but virtually everyone that you fight might as well be called generic genericson. Still, Famicom Jump II is interesting. It's deeply flawed, but interesting. And that's miles better than the train wreck that was the original Famicom Jump.